Greetings all, and welcome to Lucas Brews. In this inbox review, we'll be taking a look at the 2011 re-release of Hasegawa's 1/72nd scale P-51D Mustang. According to Scalemates, this kit was originally released in 1994, making it one of the oldest Mustangs still available brand new, and one of the older ones I'll be having a look at in my inbox review series. So join me as I take a close look at how the instructions are laid out, and how the kit goes together, what the quality of the parts and the decals are like, and at the end of the video, I'll give my opinions on whether or not I think this 30-year-old kit is still up to scratch in 2026. So without further ado, let's have a closer look at it. So taking a look at the box, it's pretty typical for other Hasegawa kits. We've got the titles in the corner here of P-51D Mustang and the scale, as well as Hasegawa's logo. A very lovely bit of artwork featuring one of the schemes included, which is Jumping Jacques, which I think is like a French version of Jack. And the aircraft sort of flying through the cloud there, and it looks really beautiful with all the bright colours and the shiny aluminium painted there, so that looks really nice. The underside of the box here mentions it contains parts for one model and that paint and glue are not included, although there are English instructions. And we also have various codes such as D25 and a Boeing officially licensed symbol there. The corners of the box are just repeats of the box art itself, and on this one you can see the price I paid, which I'll talk about a bit later. And on the very top of the box, we have a very lovely picture of a finished model to give you a bit of inspiration and a bit of an idea on the quality and details of the kit. And we've got a few other details such as a barcode, a copyright of 2011, although that doesn't really match the actual date of the tooling. And we've got some specifications of the actual kit, mentioning its length of 137 mils, wingspan of 156 mils, and that there are 56 pieces. The back of the box has nothing, which is pretty typical for Hasegawa, and it is a top opener. So sliding open the box, we've got a plastic bag here containing all of our plastic parts, a set of instructions, which we'll have a look at next, and at the very bottom we've got a very massive sheet of decals, which pretty much is the exact same size as the box. Taking a look at the instructions to see how the kit goes together and what markings are included. On the front we've got the same black and white photo of the finished aircraft that we had on the box, as well as a little bit of history and some specifications about the real aircraft, of course mentioning that it was created for the British request for North American to produce P-40s, so it goes into that background. The instructions themselves are in a fold-out format, which I'm not a huge fan of because it can take up a fair bit of space. You can sort of fold it over and sort of see most of the instructions, but they do obscure some of them. In the right corner here, starting off, we've got the sprue maps here, and as you can see, we've got quite a few sprues, although they are pretty small ones. We've got our colour callouts here with a square indicating either, I think, Mr. Hobby or Mr. Hobby's Aquas range, or GSI. And then we've also just got a simple name for the colours, and one of the colours here has a FS code, which you can use to match them. As for assembly itself, it looks like it's pretty typical for most 1/72nd scale warbirds. You start off with the cockpit, which has a single piece for the floor and radio details, with some rudder pedals and some other smaller features moulded to it. We've got a separate part here which contains the entire seat and bulkhead in one, a main instrument panel and a joystick. And for the instrument dials and details, it looks like we have a decal for the instrument panel. For step 2, once you've assembled the cockpit, you can slide it into place, and it looks like we have sidewall detailing, which is a bit unusual for an older Hasegawa warbird in my experience, so we'll have to have a look at that on the actual plastic. But once the cockpit's in place, you can also add this little part here, which sort of covers part of the rear radiator area, and then you can install the 2 exhausts. After that, the fuselage halves can be joined up, and then we move on to our wings. Mentions here that there's a option to drill out holes, which is probably going to be for drop tanks, which I think are just here. But once that's done, you can then join the 2 upper halves to the single lower half there, and then join that to the fuselage, along with the horizontal stabilizers and the lower part of the air intake for the radiator there. For step 5, we've then got our landing gear, which consists of the strut here, along with the tyre, and then a outer landing gear bay door. And we've also got 2 options for drop tanks, either the metal one here, or I believe the paper mache ones, which were slightly larger. Then for step 6, we have the propeller assembly, and unfortunately it looks like we have separate propeller blades, which I'm not a big fan of, because then you have the risk of them being harder to get at the correct angle. Hopefully everything will be keyed and it'll fit together nicely, but I suspect it may not. But once you've attached those propeller blades individually to the base piece, you then have the top of the spinner there to attach. And all of the marking guides for the colours of the propeller and the decals are here, so you've just got to remember to refer to them. I think that's also the case with the drop tanks. There's a few decals for them and different colors, so you'll have to remember to have a look at them, not the marking guide. Then for step 7, we're adding the landing gear into place along with the tail wheel, the rear exhaust sort of cover, and then the inner landing gear bay doors, a landing light, and the intake for the radiator scoop. You've also got your drop tanks and a pitot tube for the smaller details on the wings. And finally, for step 8, we then add the canopy, which comes in 2 halves. There's also a little bit of internal detailing, which looks like it gets attached to the inside of the canopy framework there. A small antenna for the radio, I'm assuming. And then you can add the propeller to the front. Although, curiously, it doesn't look like there's any sort of system to lock the propeller into place. There's no polycap here, and it doesn't appear that there's a hub at the back of the spinner to lock it into place. So you'll either have to glue the propeller to the fuselage, or be very careful, as it will probably quite easily fall out. The very back of our instructions then contain the marking guides, and it looks like we have 2 schemes included. Of course, both of them are in the pretty standard aluminium finish, one of them being from the box art, which is the 3rd Fighter Group and the 3rd Fighter Squadron, and the second aircraft is from the 4th Fighter Group, the 334th Fighter Squadron. I don't think I've seen either of these aircraft represented in other kits, so that's nice that they're a little bit different. And you've got basically either a choice of blue markings with some very prominent black and white striping, or just this bare aluminium one with, I believe, red markings. And it looks like you've got quite a few stencils, including some nice smaller common ones. Annoyingly, you don't have the color guide on the same page as the marking guide. You've basically got to flip over the sheet and look at that one there. But otherwise, though, they're not too bad. Would have been nice if they were in color, but still pretty typical from the time that this kit was made that it would be in black and white. The only other thing to mention that the instructions have is a bit of a sort of beginner's guide here, which has a few sort of basic pictures and then some verbal guides on if it's your first model. Probably not as good as some other ones I've seen in other kit companies, but still a not bad starting point if this is your first kit. And it doesn't look like it's going to be a bad one if it's your first one either. It's reasonably simple, and although the instructions are a little bit cramped and sort of not in the most easy to read format, it looks like a reasonably simple aircraft to assemble. Moving on to our plastic parts, everything is in the single bag, although it looks like we've got another small bag for our clear parts here, which is something I always like. So it's good that they've included the clear parts in their own bag to protect them from getting scratched. So taking a look at our first sprue, we'll start with Sprue G here, which contains our right fuselage half, and as you can see, we've got entirely recessed panel lines with some nice little rivet detailing along some of them, and there's also some good access hatches and other details. They've captured a lot of features on the Mustang, like the little port here, which in a lot of photos you can see a bit of leaks and stains coming out of. They've done a little bit of detail here for the sort of radiator grills there. And yeah, it looks like they've done a very nice job capturing the general surface detail. We've even got some of the little access hatches around the tail and the horizontal stabilizers here. The tail wheel comes molded to the fuselage and is in the open position, so if you want to do this kit wheels up, you're going to have to do a bit of modifying. But in general, it looks pretty good. And on the inside, we have some very basic compared to more modern kits, but still pretty reasonable raised detailing for the inner cockpit ribbing and also some of the controls and instruments. I think this might be part of the oxygen system with the sort of line running through there. So it's pretty basic, but I haven't seen any other Hasegawa kits that are warbirds that actually have any sidewall detailing, so that's interesting. There's a few guide pins to help line up parts such as the cockpit floor and the tail wheel here, as well as I think some of the internal sort of radiator area. But in general, though, it's pretty much no detail except for the basic stuff we've got here. Above that, we've got our landing gear bay doors, which have some basic details there, which I think are a little bit overscaled and not super accurate, but still give you the general details for the inside of the wheel doors there. The outside doesn't have any sort of detail there, but that looks okay. We've got part of our radiator sort of outlet scoop, which sort of sits here once the fuselage halves are together. It's got a little bit of raised detailing there on the inside, but there is also an ejector pin mark, which is going to need to be cleaned up. The outside has a little bit of recessed detailing, but also, unfortunately, a few scratches, so the tooling may be getting a little bit old in some areas. The cockpit floor doesn't look too bad. We've got very basic details there, or sort of representations of the rudder pedals molded, and some sort of strange sort of raised bump there, which I'm not too sure what that is. But our radio detailing looks pretty decent and similar to other Mustang kits. And there's some nice holes to help line up the various parts, such as the joystick and the rear bulkhead with the seat. And then we've got the intake for the main sort of lower radiator here, and that looks pretty good, nice and cleanly molded. On the far corner here, we've then got our intake for the front of the aircraft, which is again very cleanly molded without any sort of flashing. And then lastly, we've got our radiator antenna, which has a tiny bit of flash on the top there, but in general looks pretty good. Moving on to Sprue J, we have our left fuselage side here, which is pretty much identical, other than having the filler port here for the fuel tank, and the entire tail and gun sight assembly comes molded to this side. The rudder has a recessed line separating it from the rest of the vertical stabilizer, and it looks like for the sort of fabric areas we've just got very basic recessed lines, so not really super accurate in terms of surface detail, but still not too bad. They have done a nice bit of detail here for the light and the trim tab, as well as the various access hatches and rivet details, which don't look too bad at all. And on the inside, again, we've actually got raised detailing for the cockpit sidewalls. Again, very basic compared to more modern kits, but still pretty flash, I reckon, for your average Hasegawa kit. We've also got this part here, which I believe goes inside of the canopy, and it's sort of a bit of framework that sits around the radio area, and it's sort of got some recessed holes, which I think on the actual part would have been drilled out, but for the time of this kit, I'd say that's pretty nice detail. Above that, we've then got our separate propeller blades there, which looks like they've got a bit of a square sort of key on the back of them to help make sure they're at the correct angle when they're attached to the spinner, so maybe they'll go together all right. And they've got a bit of a raised line there to show where the yellow sort of markings would be. Then for the instrument panel here, we haven't really got any details, but they have slightly raised part of the panel there where the decal will go. Our cockpit seat, which comes as one part with the bulkhead, doesn't look too bad at all. It's a little bit, again, basic compared to more modern Mustang kits, especially the Tamiya one, but for a single piece part, that doesn't look too bad, and it's got the same, or the correct general shape of the Mustang seat with the headrest there. And lastly, on this sprue, we've just got that little piece which will sort of go in here to help hide part of the inside of the fuselage and make up part of the radiator wall. It's worth pointing out that there isn't really any radiator details, which you see in a lot of other kits. It's basically just a flat wall. To be fair, you kind of can't see too much of the radiator unless you're sort of looking from below the aircraft. But yeah, for the age of the kit though, I think that's still not too bad. At least they have drilled out the radiator intakes, so they are present. Moving on to our wings, as you can see, we've got the two upper halves and the lower half here. Again, it's primarily recessed details for all of the panel lines, and there are some rivets present. They have done deeper holes here drilled out for the ejection ports for the 50 cal machine guns there. And I've got to say, the edge of the wings here is very, very thin plastic. It's pretty much transparent, that's how thin it is, and it's quite sharp, actually. So yeah, it looks like though it hasn't really warped or anything, so that's pretty impressive. The inside of the wheel wells actually has a fair bit of detail attempted. They're very, very shallow. In reality, they would have been a lot deeper, but I'm pretty impressed that Hasegawa have had a go at doing all that detail. You can see all of these various linkages and controls running through the top part of the wheel well, which is accurate. Not too sure about some of these hydraulic lines, but they still look pretty good. And they've done all of the sort of raised panel lines here and rivet details inside of the wheel well, which, yeah, again, it's very shallow, but it still looks pretty decently detailed and definitely a lot better than the Italeri one. The machine guns are mainly attached to the top here, although there are holes to sort of line them up with the lower halves there. And yeah, nice job on the access hatches as well. That all looks pretty good. The upper surface looks pretty decent as well, again with recessed panel lines. And they've done the little access hatches for the fuel tanks and the parts here to access the machine gun ammunition. And they've done these little raised bumps here, which I believe are pretty accurate as well. Now, it seems to be a little bit of a debate as to whether when you're building Mustangs, especially smaller scale ones, if you should have any of the recessed panel lines visible on the wing. Because in reality, during the war, when they were producing Mustangs, they would have actually gone over most of these panel lines and filled them with putty and then sanded everything and then done an aluminium lacquer over the top to make it as smooth as possible. And I think they have tried to sort of replicate the more subtle panel lines that you do get, if any, on the wings by making them a bit more shallow. Because compared to the fuselage ones, they seem a lot less defined and not quite as deep. I think when I build this one, I might actually still run a little bit of putty just to make them a little bit more faint, but leave the panel lines on the fuselage as they are, just to make it a little bit more subtle, as if the putty was still in them. But I think they're pretty good looking wings, and yeah, there's a tiny bit of flash on the edge there, but otherwise they're really quite cleanly molded. The last sprue we have here contains all of our finer parts, and I believe they're also common for other P51s, given that it doesn't state whether it's a D or a K, it just says P51 in general, so they might have recycled a lot of these bits for the, I think, B and C models, which they've also done. But yeah, in this corner we've got our wheels here, which actually have a very nice bit of diamond tread patterning on them. So yeah, the tyres don't look too bad at all. There is a bit of a seam line along the edges, but again, considering the age of this kit, not bad. The wheel hubs look really nice and deep there, and there's a little bit of detail on the back, but more so on the front, but that's the part you're going to see more of, so that's good. They have sort of raised the edge of the wheel hub a little bit above the tyre, so that might be a little bit tricky to paint, but still not terrible. We've got the different types of exhaust here with the sort of shielded ones and then just the straight up exposed ones, which don't look too bad. We've got our spinner here with the base piece, and I can see that they've sort of got those square pegs to line up the prop blades, so they might actually go in pretty well. Then we've got the top of our spinner here, and our two horizontal stabilizers, which again have recessed details and look pretty good. Not really too many imperfections on them, and they've done a nice job doing the access hatches and then the extra recessed line here for the elevators. These look like they're going to be our D model propeller blades, and I'd say the other ones we looked at were for the K model, because I think the D aircraft tended to have these larger Hamilton standard blades, I think they were, but the K models had different ones, which were a bit narrower. They've got, looks like a pretty similar sort of attachment to the propeller base piece here, with that sort of square peg in the corner to help line them up at the correct angle, which is good. Looks like we've got another scoop and another intake here, which I thought we already looked at earlier. Yeah, this one's also got them. Looks like they're reasonably similar, but perhaps they did either spares or ones for other versions of the Mustang, so it's a bit weird that we've got double ups of them. And also the front intake there, which is a bit weird. Having a look above the parts we've got here, it looks like we may be missing something, because it's part 22. I'm going to have a quick look at the instructions here. 22. Okay. Apparently these are parts not for use. I have absolutely no idea what they are. They could be some sort of antenna or perhaps landing lights, but yeah, I think we've got separate ones, so yeah, that's a bit weird. No idea what they are for, but apparently we don't use them in this kit anyways, looking at the instructions. Our tail wheel here has some very well-defined details, a lot sharper and more crisp than the Tamiya one, and they look pretty reasonably in scale. We've got the little recessed perforations in the tyre, and then very nice hub detail there, so that looks pretty good actually. Our joystick doesn't look too bad either. They've got a little bit of detail for like the firing button at the top there, and a little bit of the sleeve at the base. Our landing gear struts, yeah, they look pretty good. No imperfections, and the details look pretty accurate. Our landing gear doors here have a bit of raised ribbing detail sort of on the inner surface there, although that's not going to be particularly visible, and looks like they've got, again, some small scratches, but nothing too bad. Our attachment points for the drop tanks, and then the drop tanks themselves take up most of the rest of the sprue here. So yeah, it looks like we've got the, I think, paper mache tanks, and then the more famous smaller metal ones there. And finally, we've got this sort of loop antenna, which I'd suspect is for a earlier version of the Mustang, because I think this style of antenna tended to be used on the B and C model. Lastly, in terms of parts, we've got our clear sprues here, which consist of our front windshield there as a single piece with a fair amount of the fuselage attached to it. So yeah, I usually tend to leave the canopies off until after I've painted the aircraft, but in this case, I think I might have to just suck it up and mask it, because that's quite a lot of the fuselage that's sort of attached to it. Below that, we've got our landing light, and to the left of that, we have our canopy here, which I'm not exactly sure which variant this is. I'm not an expert on the Mustang, but I know that a lot of D models had different styles of canopies, depending on the factory that was producing them. And unusually, for Mustang kits, when you tend to get at least two variants, we've only got the one here. Typical for Hasegawa on this one, there isn't really much of a defined edge to where the canopy and the framework is. It's sort of just a very faint raised panel line there. It's a little bit better on the windscreen here. There is a little bit more of a defined edge for the windscreen framework there. I'm not a huge fan typically of Hasegawa canopies. In terms of how clear they look pretty decent. They are a little bit on the murky side. And of course, with the bubble canopy of the D model Mustang being so curved, it's pretty hard to not get a kit that has some level of distortion. I suspect, given the thickness and the level of distortion on the canopies, I may try and either vacuform these when I build this kit, or possibly use some spares from another Mustang kit for the bubble section. But in general, though, they look reasonably okay and would definitely be serviceable. The last thing to have a look at is our decal sheet, and it takes up a fair amount of space, and that's largely because they've included these black and white markings for the third fighter group aircraft as decals. I'd say you'd be much better off painting the black and white markings by masking or by brush, depending on how you're going to do it yourself. I'll probably try and mask them up and do them with the airbrush. But we've also got our common roundels and other markings, and the quality on them looks pretty good. If you have a look at some of these finer ones, you can read all of the details for the fuel and some of the markings for the propeller blades there and various warnings and smaller stencils. So yeah, the quality on them looks pretty good and the colours are pretty nice. Don't appear to be any imperfections. I don't tend to have any issues with Hasegawa decals, apart from them tending to age very rapidly and yellow quite easily, but these ones certainly haven't, which is great, and hopefully they won't. So yeah, nice choice of markings, and the quality on them looks really quite good. So that wraps up my look at the Hasegawa 1/72nd scale P-51D Mustang. So on the whole, it seems like a reasonably decent kit, especially considering the age, and looking at other Hasegawa kits, I haven't seen ones in terms of single-engine fighters that have tried to do a little bit of sidewall detailing, so it seems like one of their better ones. In terms of pricing, the one I've got has 23 AUD on the sticker there, although I got this one from the Queensland Air Museum where I'm a member and a volunteer, so I got a slight discount and ended up paying closer to 17.25 AUD, which I think is a reasonably good price for a older kit, and definitely Italeri should take note. It seems to be pretty readily available in other hobby shops in Australia and retails anything from 15 to 25 AUD depending on where you get it. Pretty similar to the Italeri Mustang in terms of complexity, but definitely has a few spots that are a little bit more better detailed. I'd probably recommend it for beginners, although if you were going to do the box art scheme, I would recommend avoiding using the black and white decals and instead trying to paint it by hand, as I reckon that would be a lot easier. Not sure if I'm going to build it out of the box as it is, although I am very tempted to try upgrading it with a few 3D printed parts, especially in the cockpit and perhaps for the radiator as well, just to make it a little bit better. Definitely looks like an improvement over the Italeri kit, which ironically came out about 2 years after this tooling was first released in 1997. But I'm keen to see how it compares to the Airfix and Academy Mustangs in a future video, and I suspect the WWII one is going to absolutely wipe the floor, but hey, for a 1995 kit, pretty good. Thank you very much for watching this inbox review. I do hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss any future videos. And feel free to leave your thoughts on this kit or any experiences you've had with it or other Mustang toolings in the comments below. A massive thank you to my wonderful patrons who helped me to fund buying this kit, as well as the products I'll be using when I make it, and the time I spend making these videos, so thank you for helping me keep doing this. If you want to join them and get early access to my videos without ads, and also get small discounts on my cults page, then I'll leave a link to my Patreon page in the description. I'll be releasing a build video on the Tamiya F51D Mustang on the last Friday of this month as part of Forgotten Friday, so be sure to keep an eye out for that one. And at some point in the future, I'll be doing inbox reviews and later build videos on the Airfix, Academy, and WWII Mustang. Otherwise though, that's it for now, but until the next video, as always, take care and model on.